Dr. Sharad Kohli, senior economist, is joining us on this broadcast. Dr. Kohli, what do you make, of course, of this trouble mounting for Chanda Kochhar and the way this entire trial is panning out?
Good evening, Uday. Good evening to my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers. I think the tribunal has established the case that this is a classic example of 300 crores being paid, being financed to Videocon's dhoots by ICICI. So you disburse 300 crores. Once I receive the money, we will give back 64 crores to you. The two companies involved, Supreme Energy Private Limited and NuPower Renewables Private Limited, they were both used as conduits, to siphon out the money and pay them. So it's an offense under Prevention of Money Laundering, PMLA as well. And of course, this is a classic case of corruption. This reminds me of phone banking. When Prime Minister Modi, he spoke of phone banking a few years ago. This is what phone banking was, that this is how loans used to be given, that, you get a call from some top brass. Of course, here, the unfortunate part is that a banking official herself was involved in it. A banking head herself was involved. But phone banking was when you used to get a call from some neta or somebody, a high-ranking official, and the banks used to disburse. Now, see, in any classic case, when a loan is given to a borrower, there's a checklist. What do you check? What you check first is the borrower capable of repaying? Number one. What is the balance sheet of the borrower looking like? Number three. What is the credibility of the promoters and the directors of the company? What are the prospects of the company continuing? What are the basic sales, revenue, and profits of the company? So all these boxes need to be ticked at that time. And it is important to note that Videocon, we all know, is a sunken ship. That Videocon was never in a position to probably repay that amount. So this was a classic case of a deal and an arrangement between the two of them, that, okay, you disburse 300 crores. After I receive 300 crores, I will give back 64 crores to you. The remaining 236 crores, you use the way you want. So I think ICICI Bank, which is a diversified company, it's a bank which is held by diversified shareholders. It doesn't belong to government. It also doesn't belong to any particular, industrial group or so. People's money is there. So this was a classic case of siphoning out people's money for an industrial house, for vested interest, and a case of a bribe. I think tribunal finds this as an open and shut case. To me, when I had read this case at the beginning, when 2009, 2012, this happened, the disbursement happened in 2012. But ever after that, if you look at the facts of the case, they were very clear, because Mr. Deepak Kochhar, her husband, she should have disclosed at that time. If she was pleading not guilty, then she should have disclosed at the time of disbursal that my husband is involved, or these companies belong to my husband, or are directly or indirectly controlled by my husband. The fact that she did not disclose itself smells a rat at that time. And to me, it was an open and shut case always. I'm glad that, tribunal has that. I think this will set an example, Uday, for the bankers, for the banking system. And, we've constantly been talking about the government banking system. We call them as the PSBs, the public sector banks. But here is a case of a private sector bank. We call ICICI as a private sector bank because government doesn't have a stake in it. So this is a classic case of a private bank. And I think all private and public banks have got a message that if you mess around with people's money, even in private sector banks, Uday, there is people's money, because it is the deposits of the depositors which is used to lend out to the borrowers. So I think the message is loud and clear. If you mess around with that money, you're not going to be spared. It is now 13 years since the disbursal has been made. So you don't feel that if probably 4 or 5 years have gone, the file must have got buried, the case must have got buried, it must have taken a backseat, people must have forgotten, courts must have forgotten, tribunal must have forgotten. Well, that's not the case. You can be held guilty even after 12, 13 years of having done that fraud. And I think Chanda Kochhar at one point of time was the apple of everybody's eye as far as banking sector is concerned. I remember she was being called at conclaves, at conferences, as speakers, speaking and setting an example of being a banker. I think she has ruined her career, the whole reputation of being a banker. And we were so glad that there's a lady banker who's a shining star. But I think things turned out to be the other way around. I think a classic example that the arms of law are very long. You may run for miles, but eventually you're going to get caught, Uday.